Do you doubt your ability to be who you want to be?
Just want to give you a big hug right now.
Yeah. Yeah, project that on me. Thanks.
No.
Do you have difficulty taking compliments or gifts? Yeah. So, I mean, the list goes on and on.
Some of them resonate with me, but not the majority.
But a lot of them are like dinging over here with me, right? Like, that's why you're like, oh, I want to give you a hug. It's because you're like, oh, yeah, that's Keith. Like, it makes sense. So, why did I bring that up? Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
My back's feeling a little better.
Okay, good.
Trying to stand more, not sit around so much. How's your knee?
My knee is doing better. I had physical therapy this week and got set up for the next 6 weeks or so. So I have some exercises I've been doing. It's still popping and cracking a little. So when that happens, it's not great, but it's also much better.
Anything else going on with you?
Not really. Busy time of year at work. Fun time of year. Busy.
End of the school year, right?
End of the school year, yes. Anything going on with you?
Tennis. Getting used to going to games again with child one and adding that to my schedule. So that's fun and interesting. It's like, oh, it's been a while since I've had another thing added to the schedule. So it's good. I'm enjoying it. Got to go for an hour drive to watch tennis the other day. So I got to listen to some books and podcasts and stuff. That's actually what got me thinking about what we should talk about. Do you want to dive in?
I think that sounds good. I'm a little nervous about it. I don't think I told you that, but I'm a little nervous about it. But I think it will be a good topic. And I'm just looking forward to kind of getting into it with you.
Right. I've been listening to more content this week, a couple weeks, which means I've been doing more chores, so it's a good thing. Like dishes, laundry, right? Same old. But it's like, oh, opportunity to listen to podcasts. I hadn't discovered this until like 2 weeks ago. Neal Brennan has a podcast. I saw it on YouTube, like the algorithm served it up to me. Blocks podcast with Neal Brennan. He's a famous comedian, comedic writer, wrote on the Chappelle Show, movies, stuff like that. Like he's in the biz. I've never really seen much of his stand-up. And the Blocks podcast is based on his Netflix special called Blocks, the things that block us. And we talk about that. Like we've talked about perfectionism and imposter syndrome and the overwhelm and all those types of things. I made you watch the one with Mark Maron.
Right.
And then I realized this morning, I'm like, oh, I watched the one with Bill Burr. I watched the one with David Koechner. I watched the one with Beth Stelling. I'm sure there's more.
Beth Stelling. She's funny.
Ronnie Chang.
Oh.
Watch that one too. There's one with him. They're just talking about their blocks. And I'm never going to be on that podcast, but this is really interesting. And it's kind of what we do. But like, obviously he's more well known and talks to famous comedians and stuff. Well, we're just going to steal that premise. And I think we should talk about some of our blocks, see what comes out. We made lists.
We did.
And so I listed mine off. Before you listed yours, you go, I feel like your list is better than mine. So I think that's maybe a good place to start. What is that? What's that block? Comparison? Because that was on your list too.
Well, I added it to the list after the comment. So I wasn't quite sure what it was. Some of it was comparison. Some of it might be competition, but I don't know if it's really competition. I didn't need a better list of blocks than Keith.
More blocks than you.
Right. Yeah. I did ask you at one point, how many you got on your list?
Yeah. I stopped at like 9 or 10. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think the comparison block, that's something the more I think about it, it's not just about comparing our list, but I think it's also comparing what everyone else is doing. It's kind of that keeping up with the Joneses mentality or thought that we've been acclimated to, especially so when I was a young mom, the amount of activity on social media.
Well, it was so new.
It was so new. And people I didn't even know, but Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook, you would look at these beautiful cakes, these amazingly intricate 3-year-old birthday parties. There was kind of that comparison of, well, they're doing that and have it all together. I should have it all together and be able to pull off this perfectly themed party too.
And you did, but it didn't feel like it because you were coming home after a full day, making a Death Star cake or monster truck cake and ordering the invitations from somebody that was selling the digital files, right? For you to print them off.
Yep.
All these things because you see other people doing it. Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, moms in particular, that I've grown up around have also felt that way. I've heard people tell me that if I don't feel like I'm doing what everyone else is doing the way that I should be doing it.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. So that comparison, comparing to what's on social media, comparing your life of, is it the way it should be?
Yeah. That leads into another one that we both had on our list, which is overwhelm.
Overwhelm. Yes. For me, when it comes to the comparison, overwhelm does match pretty closely with that because it is something that comes out of me trying to do things in a way that is comparable to what I've seen. I've gotten much better about that because I'm more aware of it. But it's still when I get to the point where I think that everything should be a certain way, that does and can be very overwhelming. I think it's only recently that I've realized I don't have to overwhelm myself to put together an event, activity, holiday, birthday celebration. I don't have to overwhelm myself for that to still be a great time for people.
When you say overwhelm myself, what do you mean? Like, how do you overwhelm yourself? Because I think of it as there's too much coming in and too much I'm trying to keep up with. That's how I feel overwhelmed.
So I mean...
Because you're saying you're doing it to yourself.
I am. I think I am. So that's interesting.
I think it's being done to me, and you think you're doing it to yourself.
Maybe in my example, those are both true at the same time.
Yeah.
Where I'm creating overwhelm for myself, but then also overwhelm for you.
Because you can't do it all, so then it kind of gets outsourced.
Right. Or you see me running around trying to do all the things I think should be done, quote unquote.
Mm.
And then you have me up until 2 a.m. or up early, tired or cranky.
Well, out of that too comes the people pleasing. You mentioned that you have that, but then that's a good one because I have that too. And so when I see you being stretched too thin, then I'm like, well, I got to stop my plan, and I have to go help Laura with hers because I want to be helpful. That thing where if I'm in a bad place, the voice would be like, well, now I got to do what she wants, right? Like that could crop up and like, now I got to go do this, and I'm not in charge of what I want to do. That's the bad side of that. Whereas what it really comes from is I want to be of service. I want to help because I'm empathetic and I'm sensitive. Those feel like they can be blocks in that way if it's coming from a low energy place. That's how I experience your overwhelm. That's how it kind of comes over to me, and then I feel overwhelmed.
Right. So you talked about people pleasing a little bit. So can you talk a little bit? There was one that you said that made me smile, and you said, you can smile.
I'm like, yeah, I see you react to that. Which one was it?
So it was the block of wanting to be right.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think that's tied to my particularness also. That was another thing I wrote down. I want to be right.
Why?
I think because I think that's just how I was trained, right? To get all the answers right. And if I can be right, that equals good. And I think I am right a lot of the time, But that's not helpful to other people. Like, is there like a saying, would you rather be right and alone or happy with other people kind of thing? I don't know. There's something there where it's probably just about approval and I've talked about like not wanting to be part of a bad plan.
Right.
Like even like making the list. I had a regular ballpoint pen. I had to get up and get a different pen. I am not going to sit here and write with this pen that I'm not enjoying writing with. I think that's kind of connected. Why would I let it continue down this path if it's not enjoyable? That pops up with me being particular about how to do things. If it feels right to me, it must be right. And then it stems into another thing of like, I'm overly aware. I'm hyper aware of something, but then that puts me in my own head, which makes me not aware of everything because I'm overthinking. So it's just the cycle of all these little things. And it's really interesting to me how they're all connected. I don't know. It's just a big old mess of things that can get in my way.
So I want to go back to the being right, because you're right, they're all connected. So it's easy to kind of bounce around on them. Are there ways that being right serves you? Or do you see it purely as a block?
Oh, I think it drives me to be better or do better or find the information that's going to serve me best. When it's pointed at me and something I'm trying to do, it can be very helpful, right? The rigor. But when it's pointed at, say, child 1 in tennis, now I want to know the right way to do tennis. So I was also watching this week videos on tennis and how to volley and how to strike the ball, and it comes from your shoulder. I've never played tennis in my life. I mean, I've hit a tennis ball with a tennis racket, but I've never played tennis.
It's a good start.
Yeah. I don't remember the last time I've done that. I was probably a kid, but I don't know how to play tennis, but now I want to know how to do it right so that I can support him. And it's the same with as they're growing as humans, right? Because this came up in one of the interview with David Koechner. He says something about it. So I recommend people go watch that. And it's a perfect representation of how I feel as a father, wanting everything to be okay with them. And for like, I see them doing something that's not going to work out. It's like, you should maybe not do that. And why don't you try it this way? It's like that's about me not wanting to see them fail.
And I'm just sitting here shaking my head because how will they learn if we don't let them experience, as long as it's not a dangerous mistake, right?
Yeah.
But how do we let them learn?
Yeah.
As well.
And so like, I don't want it to come out as being oppressive and me being too much and pushing them away. And it's really hard to step back because the first 15 years with them has been me hand-holding, teaching you how to walk and talk and read, And so now it's like, and now I have to let you go kind of thing. So yeah, I guess there's probably a lot more there than I think about. Actually, it coming up in that podcast was like one of the things where I'm like, oh, that's how I feel. I totally relate to that. And it's not like I walk around thinking like, I'm right. I'm going to tell everybody that I'm right. But I see it. I'm like, I definitely think I'm right. And I'm going to share it with Laura. Don't do it that way. You're going to cut your finger, Oh, did you think about trying it this way? It's like, it could be oppressive. It could be oppressive to me too, if I do it to myself, right? Right. So
is there a right way to load the dishwasher?
Yes. Yep.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You seem very confident.
I feel that in my core. I mean, that's why if you're doing that, I just walk away. I have to walk away.
I mean, there's a wrong way.
Yeah.
But okay.
There's a lot of right ways and there's a lot of wrong ways. I need to realize that.
Can there ever be just an okay way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
I know you are.
I'm getting there. There's an optimal way though. But it's like,
be efficient.
What's the return on that, right? Of if I load the dishwasher 20% better, is that a good return on my investment? No, it's not.
Sorry.
So that's how I'm thinking about it. Saving that particularness for the things that really matter.
Right.
Like showing up to watch tennis. That 100% is right.
Yes.
No matter how far away it is. Like I drive and I go and I'm there, not to coach, not to say you could have done this better or that was really great, simply to be there and to be supportive and to make sure that like the kids know I'm going to be there. That's what they need, right?
Yeah. Another thing that you talked about was being particular. I can be particular too. And I don't know if it's particular or perfectionism or some combination of that. It often shows up in taking longer than it needs to complete something. And it can also lead into, if it doesn't occur the way that I think it should, or that I had in my head, the kind of the perfect approach.
Mm-hmm.
There are times that then leads to worry, anxiety, and overthinking.
And then procrastination. That was on your list too. That seems very connected.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically said procrastination earlier in that.
Right.
Of like delaying because it's not going to be right.
No.
No.
My first job out of grad school, I worked with leadership programming at a college. One of the programs that I had to do was called Lunch with Leaders. It was this event where we brought in leaders from the community, so business leaders, administrators, to really talk with and have lunch with student leaders to help grow in leadership, make connections. And I was really excited about the event. I had gotten a grant to do it. I remember I spent hours on a seating chart for like 40 people.
Mm-hmm.
Hours. I wanted it to be perfectly balanced, right? One leader from the community, one from the college, and then students from different groups. So it was evenly spread out. For me, that made all the sense in the world to spend time on that seating chart, to spend time on the menu, the guest list, taking the time to do the event in a way that I thought was going to be very, very special, impactful, impressive, perhaps. And I remember my supervisor, she probably said, "It's going to be fine. You don't need to keep rearranging and messing with the seating chart." I think I even had like a diagram, like at a wedding, right? Like I was putting people at different tables and moving them around, and I had keys.
Like trying to solve a murder on a crime drama.
Right. Right. That was one thing that I remember where I really noticed that the perfectionism and my particularness went into overdrive. And although I had the time to do it, did I? If my supervisor mentioned it, that meant other things were not happening because I was in this loop of trying to make this perfect event. I know that's my tendency, is to spend time. I think I've approached it in different ways where perhaps I spend more of my own personal time to make things shine. I have that constant tension between things needing to be the way that I think that they should be and the amount of time I'm willing to invest in them. That tension is something that I contend with now, where in the past, I didn't see that. It was just the way that I needed to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing that stands out about that is you wanted to impress.
Oh, interesting.
Why do you want to impress people? You know, why do you want to be good enough? One of my things is I don't feel good enough. I'm always trying to be good enough. And I think that's where like my particularness comes out. I was saying I want it to be right because I want someone to notice that I'm doing it right.
Yeah. Where does that come from?
Childhood. I mean, it's all about your childhood.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point, you know, of like that's who installs the blocks, right? It's your upbringing. It's your experiences.
So you experienced that growing up?
Yeah, you want to be noticed, right? The way to get noticed is to get the best grades or to have the best drawing or like, because someone will actually make note of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, versus getting the negative attention for doing the wrong thing of making a mess or getting your clothes dirty, you know, and coming home and like, oh, look what you did, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, ew.
Right.
I don't know if it felt like, I'm like, oh, I wonder if you noticed that you said, I wanted to impress people.
I don't think I did notice that.
listening to the stuff we listen to, the thing that comes up a lot is like codependency. If you search that, it'll come up with what are characteristics of someone who's codependent and things like that. And some of them hit and some of them don't. And I'm sure some of them resonate with you.
Let's go here.
Okay.
Because I'm curious. I know that you've said that quite a bit. I'm pretty certain I'm codependent, and I'd be curious to see what that actually means.
So like characteristics of codependent people are an exaggerated sense of responsibility for the actions of others.
Okay.
A tendency to do more than their share of all of the time. Become hurt when people don't recognize their efforts. Unhealthy dependency on relationships, obviously. Do anything to hold on. So there's things like that. A sense of guilt when asserting themselves. Extreme need for approval and recognition. Lack of trust in self and others. I lack ambition. I lack self-esteem. I notice that I can go there. These are things I'm examining this. So it's like, I don't walk around like low all the time. I'm just saying the reason I'm talking about these is because I'm actually aware of it, which means I can improve and notice it. Rigidity, difficulty identifying feelings. So like I'm trying to identify it, right? I'm like, but I've had trouble doing that before. This is like a questionnaire to identify. Do you keep quiet to avoid arguments? Are you always worried about others' opinions of you? Have you ever lived with somebody with alcohol or drug problem or other abuses too are on here? Are the opinions of others more important than your own? Do you have difficulty adjusting to changes at work or home? I used to have a really hard time with it. It's like why traveling's hard for me.
Right.
It's different. There's some things like, do you feel rejected when significant others spend time with friends? Like, I don't necessarily feel that.
I don't.
Do you doubt your ability to be who you want to be?
Just want to give you a big hug right now.
Yeah. Yeah, project that on me. Thanks. Do you have difficulty taking compliments or gifts? Yeah. So, I mean, the list goes on and on.
Some of them resonate with me, but not the majority.
But a lot of them are like dinging over here with me, right? Like, that's why you're like, oh, I want to give you a hug. It's because you're like, oh, yeah, that's Keith. Like, it makes sense. So, why did I bring that up?
Because we were talking about impressing people or...
Yeah. I see a real connection between me wanting to impress you or impress people. Maybe it was something like that.
I think it's an important conversation to talk about, though, because it's something that you're noticing about yourself. How does that, and you identified it as a block. So how do you see that as a block?
Well, the one thing that I wrote down, I finally found in my note, was a characteristic of codependent is constantly looking outside of yourself for the approval. And I don't know if I necessarily do that part, but I probably do, right? Or looking for confirmation or affirmation, right? I was kind of describing that earlier of, that's why I want to be right.
Sure.
So just noticing that could be a place I go to, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm reading that list and I'm giggling because it's resonating with me, it's like, oh, okay, so this is something to pay attention to. You hear codependency everywhere right now. It's very in the zeitgeist and on people's minds. We've all finally discovered this in the last 10 years now. Like, okay.
Yeah.
And so let's pay attention to it.
And Mark Maron talked about it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. About being codependent.
Yeah. Well, so I listened to so many of those interviews.
Sure.
It comes up in the majority of them.
Yeah.
They feel, so much that they're even like, we all seem to have a healthy dose of this, because connection is such an integral part of our existence and our experience, right? If you over-index on the approval of others and all of those things, then it's like I was saying, if you're feeling overwhelmed and that makes me feel bad and I drop everything I'm doing to help you with your problem, that's like me using you as an excuse to not follow what I have on my plan. And then you can get resentments and you can get this and that. The whole thing of all of this is we notice these things and it's interesting and a little laughable because the cure-all is communication. I think but it can be really hard to just come out and say, like, to notice that I need your approval but then I get shy and withdraw because I have a hard time taking compliments.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you win at that?
Right.
The thing I need, it also makes me feel really awkward.
Kind of, you want the recognition, but you don't want to admit that you want the recognition.
Yeah. Something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's probably wrapped up in some of as kids, if you get negative attention being noticed in a way that doesn't feel comfortable, that can also add to
Then you want to make yourself
the
small.
complication. Right.
Make yourself small. That's like where the hyper awareness comes from, is what's the mood in the room? How is what I'm going to do? Or if I make a scene by wanting to be seen, well, I guess it's more of, is there space for me in the room to be seen? Or is it better if I'm quiet and if I withdraw and don't take up space? Like, is there room for me to have attention? Because it's like, I don't want that negative attention.
Right.
Attention is attention. No, it's not. There's good attention. There's bad attention. And if it's all you know, though, it's all you know.
Right. I'm pausing because I'm thinking. So I'm looking at your list, and a lot of what you listed fits into that codependent bucket somewhat.
Probably, yeah.
And probably some of what's in mine too.
Mm-hmm.
Even though when you were reading it, I was like, oh yeah, well, that's me. But that's not me, So
like some of the things that you listed, like people pleaser, anxiety, worry.
Yeah.
Those are on my list. I just forgot to write them down, I think. As soon as you told me, I'm like, oh, those are on my list.
Yeah.
And I think it's under that umbrella.
Well, and I think it's hard because how that blocks for me is that I often say yes to things or do things that mean sacrificing time for myself or my basic human needs. Like a classic example for me is in the morning or after work, like I'm going to go to the gym, but then somebody walks in my office and wants to chat at the end of the day. Instead of saying, no, I have to go, I have an appointment or I have a commitment, it never felt important enough because it wasn't an actual meeting or scheduled thing. It was something I was doing to take care of myself, but I could blow it off because I didn't want to tell someone, no, sorry, can't talk right now. I don't have a minute. I do have to go, Yeah,
it's that the first thing to go is self-care.
Right.
The thing we need the most to make sure that we continue to show up as our best self, it's the first thing we cast aside. The thing that came to mind when you're saying that, because we've talked about it before, is being reprioritized. I don't think either one of us like that feeling. And that's, I think, what I was trying to say before, when I'm sensing that you're overwhelmed and then I'm not being a good person if I don't step in and help. I think what I'm feeling is like, now I have to reprioritize what I thought I was doing so that I can help you. Right?
I'm thinking of an example.
Go ahead.
And this is maybe a silly one, but
they're all silly because I love you so much.
Aww.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, but I would say it didn't happen this year, I don't think. But often when it comes to the time of year where I'm canning, I normally have 95% of what I need, but not always. I know there's been 1 or 2 times that I said, Keith, I need you to go to the store and I need you to get some
gelatin,
the Serta, to put in so I can do raspberry jam.
In 20 minutes, one time I had to go to the store like 3 times.
Yep. I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell you this. Nope, that's not the right stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
you'd think we didn't have cell phones.
Right. And you were so nice and you went and got it and you went twice. And
it was 3 times at
least.
3
times?
Yeah. It was comical. Like I couldn't be mad because I'm like, this is like a sitcom.
Yes. And if you didn't go to Walmart, I would have asked you to sit and stir the raspberries constantly. So that reprioritized you from, whatever you were doing to be like, hey, and it's not that we can't help each other out or that you didn't do it or you weren't like, I'll do this, but that also meant that me taking something on and getting overwhelmed ended in me having to reprioritize what you were doing to help.
Another big thing for you don't like to ask for help.
No, I don't.
I don't think we talked about that yet, have we?
No, we haven't.
So that's highlighted
a big
that.
block for me.
Yeah. When you don't, it snowballs and it can get even worse when you finally are like, well, I need this. And it's like, well, why didn't you say something? I mean, I know now that that's a big deal for you. It probably is for me too.
Yeah.
I don't want to bother people. That's kind of like what my brain tells me is like, we talked about that last time. Like, don't be a bother. So like when you said that, like what comes up for you? Like, why do you say that?
What do you mean? Don't be a bother?
You say a block for you is asking for help. You don't like to ask for help.
I don't like to ask for help because I figure whatever it is I'm doing, I created my own mess. So I should have to deal with it. Even last Friday, I was in a lot of pain with my knee.
Right.
A lot of pain.
You went to the doctor.
I went to the doctor actually, and I took ibuprofen, which anyway, I don't do that a lot. And this is how I asked for help. I'm going to go back to our text message and I'm going to tell you how I asked for help. Okay. Because I was sitting in a chair in our living room. My knee was elevated. It was being iced. It was really, really sore just sitting. So I'm going to see. Oh, so I was a little more direct than I thought. So this is what I anticipated I sent you, but I've been working on this. What I thought I sent you, have you eaten supper yet? What are you thinking of having? That's what I thought. I probably had texted you. Because that's interesting. That's in my head of how I would ask. Open the door to a conversation that could be like, well, would you mind making enough for me too?
It's like it feels like you're trying to trick me into helping you, is how it feels on this end.
So this is what I actually did say. And so I'm a little proud of myself. Okay.
Okay.
So I said, will you make supper tonight for me or should I order something? So I still hedged.
Yeah.
I still hedged a little.
I want to know how people feel about receiving a text like that.
Yeah.
That's weighty to me. That still feels heavy. Like,
oh, no,
say it again.
Okay. Will you make supper tonight for me or should I order something? Then I put 2 smiley faces.
So how that can read like into my brain is, are you going to take care of me or do I have to do it myself?
Well, that's interesting because what I'm saying is, do you have time to help me? But if not, don't worry, I don't want to be a bother.
Right. So this is what we have to work with, right? We both overthink. We both don't want to be a bother.
Oh, here we go. And then you said, make you what? Then I said, pulled pork, side salad. And then the next text, okay, this is where it gets. Or I could order something too with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 grimace faces. I am bad at asking for help, and I know you are sore too, with another 6 grimace faces.
Yeah, it's still at the point where I need to remember that you have a hard time asking for what you want, and I have a hard time with people beating around the bush. I like people to be direct, but kind, obviously. Like, hey, I want to do this for dinner. Can you turn the oven on? I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Being aware of our needs and each of us being better at communicating them. It's not like a real issue anymore, but it can be if we're not, mindful and taking care of ourselves, right?
Right.
Like if you skip those things and have that meeting that you were talking about, then you're depleted.
I did that for years.
Years, yeah.
I mean, I still do it, but not like I used to.
Well, and then we overcompensate, and I deserve to relax, and I deserve all the special things, and then having all of the things that we think make us feel better tends to make me feel worse as I'm getting older, right? Like I can't eat like I used to. I can't drink alcohol like I used to.
Which is probably for the best, right?
Yeah.
We aren't in our 20s, and
exactly.
Behavior in 20s is not necessarily helpful.
And then like realizing like it's like the coping mechanisms, right? It's like,
yeah.
There are so much better coping mechanisms. I guess maybe that finding that change, that's the hard part, is actually choosing to do it differently.
What I want to ask you about is the being in your own head. I'm often more an external processor, shall we say? And so I'd like to hear a little bit about that one.
I think that's connected to, you mentioned overthinking when we were sharing our list. And I was like, oh, that's what I mean when I'm talking about being in my own head. And I process internally, but I've been working on, journaling more, and I was having these conversations help me get it out, which is a great way to process. But my home is in my head, thinking, processing. I'll be thinking about something for weeks, and then when it comes out, you're like, oh, you've really been thinking about this. I haven't vocalized it. And the block of it is I'm so in my head about something that it interrupts the interaction I could be having with others. Overthinking what I said instead of listening to how the other person heard it and what they're giving back to me. And, it's part of that hyper awareness where, yeah, being aware is great, but I'm so aware that now I'm thinking too much about what I'm aware of. Like, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, so then I'm self-censoring. I think it's people pleasing too. It's like, oh, did what I just said? Oh, I better not talk so much. Or you hear on, like, right. You could do a bingo game on here of like, I'm like, oh, that was a ramble. That's me saying like, I'm talking too much. I'm being, what's that word?
Self-deprecating?
No, well, yeah, but it's like almost too accommodating. Who wants to listen to me apologize for every thought I'm having? Like, I didn't say A because I want to defend everybody that believes in B. And nobody thought that, but I'm thinking that. I'm like, I like apples. Oh, but bananas are okay too. It's just, I don't like them. And, they're probably okay. Like, I could just ping pong in my head about stuff like that.
That resonates with me.
That's not a fun conversation to be a part of with me, I bet, if I get there. And so then I tend to just be introspective. But that's changing. That's changed. And if I overthink, I become very dull. It's just not fun. Like right now, I feel really dull. Like, because I'm overthinking, talking about overthinking.
But
which means I should just be quiet.
You go into your head.
Yeah.
That is a different way than it shows up for me from an overthinking standpoint. Actually, I mean, the more I'm thinking about it, I probably show up more that way with people I don't know as well to try and meet the social norms. With you hear me process, overthink, worry, spin. I've shared on here, but I have anxiety. I can spend a lot of my time worrying about how did I come across? What was it that I said? How was it received? What could people have possibly thought? Did I not include enough? Like you were saying, I like apples, but oranges, bananas, they're good too. Viable options, just not for me, but it could be for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say it's the ticker tape in my head. So the overthinking and the worry pair pretty closely for me, all wrapped up into that anxiety.
The overthinking, it probably presents itself more when I'm not sure if it's safe for me to show up as me.
Yeah.
And so I'm second guessing, like, how am I going to come across? Like you said, what are the norms here? Can I say that? Do they actually want to hear what I have to say? Or should I just say what I know will be okay to say?
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that, what is it? It's like over processing. The brain is running, it's clocking things higher than it's meant to. And I just need to find like some of those things that help us, like box breathing and exercise versus a 6-pack to help.
Oh, not a 6-pack of beer.
No, that's what you meant. No, that's what I meant.
At first I thought you meant like a 6-pack of abs. I'm like, wait, are we exercising?
I'm going for a full 9-pack, like Lego Batman.
Oh, there you go. Gosh.
That's what I mean. what are the things that are going to help me process better? And
well, I think what's hard is we're sitting here in your studio. You feel safe because it's just you and I.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think probably in our heads, we also know that some people might listen to this and we're being fairly open.
Yeah. And like, what? Yeah.
And I think that's important. And at the same time, it also creates some level of worry.
Yeah.
Because people might not see us that way. How we show up isn't necessarily how we see ourselves and how we experience ourselves.
It's a good exercise to push through that worry about us talking about something, knowing that some people don't see us that way, or we don't have those types of conversations with certain people that might listen, because it doesn't really matter. It's us.
Yeah, I like that.
Anything you want to end with?
I wonder if we should end with a quote today.
Go for it.
Do you want to try that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. What do you got for a quote over there?
Okay. It's a Swedish proverb. Shared joy is double joy. I like that. Shared joy.
I think that just says it itself. That's really great.
It does. How about you?
Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. The Dalai Lama.
Ours go together.
They always go together.
I like it. Like peanut butter and jelly.
Mm-hmm.
No? Like a bratwurst and stone ground mustard?
Yeah. Ooh, there we go. That's my wheelhouse. It's starting to be grill season too.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get out of here.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I just thought it was an interesting way to to talk about some stuff that was coming up because it's what I was listening to.
Yeah, I think it's a good framing.
It's freeing for me to see that other people are being vulnerable and sharing those things.
It's freeing on this end of the episode. At the beginning, right. I was very nervous because I gave you my list and I thought, what is he going to ask me and what is going to come out of my mouth?
Yeah, you're being seen, right? You're showing yourself a little bit.
Yes, and not just in little sprinkles throughout an episode, but focused solely on that.
Yeah.
Was a little vulnerable for me. I'm going to sneeze.
Look at a light. I'm covered.
Oh, okay. Good. Sorry. I was trying to make it go away.
We'll be back with more blocks later for sure. We just don't always call them blocks. Mm-hmm.